Hey guys, welcome back. Today we have the final video in our 32 team series. We are covering the Boston Bruins today, their 2022-23 season that was, and their 23-24 season that's upcoming in only a couple of weeks' time from now. So yeah, it's exciting news, but let's hop straight into the recap. And Boston Bruins fans, I know you probably don't really want to relive the recap, but we're going to anyway. The good news is that the regular season was absolutely phenomenal. If you were a Boston Bruins fan throughout those 82 games last season, wow, you were having the absolute time of your life. You probably thought at the start there was a little glimpse of chance that you were going to have a reasonably good season with Bergeron and Krejci signing on for that 1 year, coming back, and that one last hurrah. But I don't think anyone would have expected what Boston Bruins did in the regular season. They finished first overall in the NHL, which meant obviously first in the Atlantic. They had 135 points and 65 wins in a record-breaking season. Absolutely phenomenal. They were first in the penalty kill with an 87.3%. They were first in goals against. Not just first in goals against, they were 36 goals better off than the next lowest team. And then they were second in goals for, only behind the Edmonton Oilers, who just had a ridiculous season on the power play. Their goal difference was 128 goals ahead. The next best was 53, which means they had a 75 better off goal difference. Everything just in that season, stats wise, was ridiculously phenomenal. One of the most incredible seasons I've ever watched, and I know Jaden will say the same thing in a minute. It's just incredible scenes from what we saw from the Boston Bruins last season. And by all means, you would think with that season they'd walk into the playoffs and most likely be on the run to the cup and potentially even winning a cup. However, it was not to be, as they get kicked out in the first round in 7 games by the 17th seeded Florida Panthers. I only throw that in because it just adds salt to the wounds. Um, yeah, incredible. They were 3-1 up in the series, looked like they were going to cruise to either a 4-1 or a 4-2 series win, head off into the second round of the playoffs, and ultimately would have played the Leafs, which I think we all would have loved, as those series seem to always provide great games and some good comedy for the Leafs when they get kicked out in 7. Um, but it wasn't to be, and the Bruins' record-breaking season ends tragically, unfortunately. Um, yeah, so sorry, Bruins fans, for having to sort of recap that. But hey, the 82 games, best you've probably ever seen and best you'll probably see for a long time. So that's the end of the recap, and I'm going to hand off over to Jaden now to take us through the 2023-24 projected lineup for the Boston Bruins.
Alrighty. Yeah, so like you said, big season, a lot of changes coming here. So just slightly in the cap, just 400,000 in free cap. Obviously, starting off with the lineups here, we got Marchand, Coyle, Pasternak, Frederick, Zaka, DeBrusque, um, Van Riemsdyk, Geeky, Loco, Lucic, Brown, and Greer. Defenders, Grzelcyk, McAvoy, Lindholm, Carlo, Forbort, and Shattenkirk. And then goalies, you still got Allmark and Swayman. Scratches, Boquist, Magna, Zaboreal, and Mitchell. Now, you do have Jason and Heinen as PTOs, professional tryouts, so they could be signed, but that's to be seen. Notable losses. It's a bit of a list here, and some very key notable ones here. So Arkin, Bergeron, and Krejci both retiring. That's your big ones there. Bertuzzi, though, is a rental, still a big loss. Carrick, Clifton, Hathaway, Koppinen, Lettieri, Nosik, Orlov, and Wagner. So, very deep list there. Very key key pieces, basically your first and second line centers. Um, one of your best scoring wingers there as well, and a great defender going to Carolina. So a lot missing. And their additions, they lose a lot of first and second liner players, and their additions are all third and fourth line depth to cover it. So they're definitely missing a first line center. I think that can only be done by a trade, maybe getting rid of one of the goalies, and that's probably, like, if you're looking at it, probably would be Ullmark, because Swayman's RFA a little bit cheaper for this season if you were going to do that. But yeah, I guess I'll pass it off to you. Is that what you would do to boost this team to be another cup contender, or would you run with this team and hope you at least make the playoffs, because how depleted you are at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard call, isn't it? Because, you don't just lose one of the best sort of two-way centers in the league in Patrice Bergeron, but you also lose David Krejci. So even though, Krejci was probably, yeah, he played a lot of second line, but you could say you can cover that second line with a Pavel Zacha or a Charlie Coyle. Krejci would more on that third sort of line, but it's still a big loss because instead of having Charlie Coyle, Zacha, Krejci, Bergeron, you've now only got the two of those, and they bring in Morgan Geekie, who's a reasonable coverage down on that sort of fourth line, third line. I know they've got him at the third line at the moment, but I feel like you're losing. Patrice Bergeron's a massive loss, and then you also throw Krejci in that. You are missing two big pieces, and Morgan Geekie does not even come close to covering that. And I just don't think Charlie Coyle is up to, that first line center role. Pavel Zacha is only 26, and he did show massive inroads last year. So I think you and I both agree he's probably going to take that number one center spot, and see how he goes with it. But I also don't think Pavel Zacha is a first line center. So yeah, the question is will the likes of Pasternak and Marchand, lift Pavel Zacha's game play, and can we see him rise to the occasion? But again, I've still got concerns, because then you've got Coyle on the second line, which I think's okay, Geeky on the third line, and I just feel like that's a real lack position. But to your point, do you trade out an Allmark or Swayman? If you're going to do either, it would be obvious. It would be Allmark that you trade out. Not only, is Allmark the older option, but he's only got the 1 year left after this season, so he's only got the 2 seasons left. UFA status, and his $5 million cap hit, which means that they would be able to bring in a higher contract than they would if they got rid of Swayman. So, but if you do that, you are breaking up probably, I don't even think it's arguably at this point, but the best goalie tandem in the league. So, yeah, it's a catch-22, isn't it? I guess if you're Boston, how much of a chance do you believe you are at winning the cup with this team currently, considering they didn't, that
Well, you
they
have to
weren't
go
able
for it,
to?
right, though, no matter what, because of the structure of the team. You got Coyle, Pasternak, McAvoy, like all these people for extended seasons. So you kind of have to go for it, because they're not going to finish bottom five or something like that and get first pick. So
No, this team isn't gonna. I can't see this team being like having that shocking of a season that they finished eighth in the Atlantic or anything like that. Um, but again, yeah, I mean, they're not gonna have a 165 win season, 135 points, record breaking, be top of the Atlantic, top of the NHL. This team's not gonna do that. Even if they were to bring in a top line center, I just don't think this team would do it again. Um,
I think we all
but
agree like they're going to fall. The question is, how hard do they fall? Do they make the playoffs still, or do they fall out of the playoffs? Like that's my biggest question for this team. Personally, at the moment, I have them falling out just
out of
because
the playoffs,
I am
yeah.
higher on teams like Ottawa and whatnot,
Mm.
and I could easily see Ottawa finishing like second in the division behind like the Leafs or something. So um, I have Boston at the moment falling out. If they do something with getting like fixing that center, how as long as they've done it smartly, then I could see them easily making the playoffs. But I would probably need to see some sort of addition there.
Yeah, it's. I mean, who do you re-sign? Because they were never going to be able to re-sign the likes of Orlov or Bertuzzi. Um, yeah, it just wasn't. It wasn't going to happen. So, I mean, where would that signing have come from? They got, all of the signings they got were 1 mil for JVR,
Yeah,
1 mil for Lucic.
most
It was
expensive
all
2 mil
based on
was geeky.
was Morgan Geeky, which I get as a depth piece. That's a that's a pretty reasonable contract for what he can provide. He's quite young. He'll slot in on that third center line, but yeah, they definitely are missing a piece down that center, but I just don't see what they could do to fix that. So I feel like they have to run this team. Um, because even if you do get rid of Allmark, who are you bringing in? Like,
Well,
what
you'd
first line
probably
centers
just
out there?
yeah, like, and especially for what Allmark's 5 mil, they've only got 400,000 in cap, so you're looking at a 5.5 mil player, unless
Yeah.
you're dumping cap elsewhere. That or they eat some of the contract, but that's basically it on what you're going to get for a first line center. There's not many two options out there of availability either,
And they
and
don't have trade pieces other than like they've got
yeah,
no first, second, or third this year. Their first next year has a condition to it, which I'm not exactly sure. I think event 21st is a top 10. So they current. Oh, okay. They could retain. So they can retain this year's pick if it's a top 10, which it probably won't be. So they still have their 2025, but with that condition on it, I don't really know what they can do in terms of if they are
nah,
able to trade
that's
it.
that's strapped. Like the amount of flexibility this team has is very limited on what you can do. It's still
Yeah.
a very strong team. Like you just had Pasternak score 60 goals. I don't see him scoring another 60 if he has a line mate like a Koyo or a Zaka. I think it would come down to maybe a 40 plus, probably 40 to 50, maybe even the 50s. But I couldn't see him hitting 60 again if he had, a Zaka or a Coil lining him for the whole season. So like you're losing goals in Bergeron. He was your second leader in goals with 27. You're losing goals in Krejci, obviously Bertuzzi, and you only added depth that don't really bring in the goals. You're probably going to lose goals in Pasternak because of the line mate he has. Like you're losing so many goals here that your goals for per game is definitely going to go down. How hard it falls, to be seen. Your goals against, like one of the strongest defensive teams, and that was because of how strong they were as four lines, and basically the whole third and fourth lines have been retooled completely. Their
Yeah.
first and second have been retooled, so
You're
everything
losing the best two-way
yeah,
two-way player in the game in
everything's shaken
Bergeron.
up, and I think for the goals against, you're completely relying on your goalies there to maintain that. They had a above average power play and the best PK in the league, but like I could see that power play dropping off, to a 16th in the league or lower. And yeah, I've got a lot of doubts on this on how it's going to work out. Um, it's just one of those things where like they've just named Marchand captain because Bergeron's left. I think he's what the last of the 2011 Cup boys left there. So that experience from that Cup run, you're not really getting that as much anymore. You're kind of relying on one person to relay that.
Oh,
And
to be fair, they brought Lukic back, so
oh,
technically that's
Lucic.
two now.
Well, yeah, Lucic as well. But that's another thing. I've never been high on Lucic just as a hockey player in regards to the offense and whatnot. Like, sure, he's physical and whatnot, and you probably want that in the playoffs, maybe. But and obviously he's played in Boston before. So Boston fans were pretty happy about that. But yeah, I've just got so many worries with this. Like they bring in some good depth. Like I like Boquist, ex New Jersey. I think that's really good. You still got Magna. They just traded in Mitchell as well. So I like their depth, their scratches. I just think they need another top heavy player, but obviously their cap is kind of saying we can't do that. And unfortunately, that's what happens when you sign 11 mil plus contracts. Pasternak's he's worth it in a sense, obviously, but he's eating it up. And we only just had recently the first ever 10 million plus player win the cup, and that was a flat 10 million, and the salary cap went up by a million. So it's telling me that you basically can only afford one of those type of contracts, and yeah, he's eating up an extra 1 point something mil. So,
I mean, I'd rather
but he
his
scores
contract
60.
than
Oh yeah, you
I'd rather his contract than Austin Matthews, but
100%.
um, yeah, it's I the issue I think I see with this team is if this was last season and this was the team they were putting out, I would probably be like, yeah, I reckon they still make the playoffs reasonably comfortably. Unfortunately, we're another season in. Buffalo are just making improvements. Ottawa are continuously improving. Detroit are continuously improving. Um, you could say Montreal as well, but I don't think Montreal are there yet. So now you've got those three stepping into it. You've already got Toronto, who will make the playoffs unless something drastic happens. Tampa Bay, who are coming to the end of their dynasty, but they're still relatively strong. Florida, who's the big question mark because they were very ordinary last season
Very ordinary.
throughout the whole year, but they go on one of the craziest runs. So what are they going to produce? So you've now got 7 teams compared to last season, which you only had the 3 and the Florida sort of coming through at the end. Like, if it was last season, I would be saying, yeah, this team will make playoffs. It's fine. But now with those teams, even they could still have a good season in
Mm.
terms of what these players produce and still miss the playoffs. That's my biggest concern. Like I feel like this is a season that even a good season might have you not playing playoffs.
Yeah,
You could find yourself 6th in the Atlantic with 96 points. Um,
yeah.
so yeah,
The, the,
it is a worry
yeah, the
because if
worrying
they
thing
don't
is
do it
like they
this
also
year.
have like the worst prospect pool in the league as per like the Athletic. So even if you don't agree with that, they've got one of the worst prospect pools, and that comes with being so successful for so long, basically since like 2011. Um, so over 10 years, they've been successful, and now they got one of the worst prospect pools. If they miss the playoffs this year, like what happens? DeBrusque contract's up. A couple of the people they brought in is up. Just a lot of the depth. Obviously, Marchand will be a UF like expiring contract that year. Then, like, are you tearing it down at that point? Because Allmark would only have a year left if you don't trade him. Swayman will get his payday, most likely, considering that I expect him to have another good season. So he's probably going to get the Allmark contract or better. Um, yeah, so if they don't make the playoffs, like what happens with this team? Because they don't have the prospect
Well,
pool, they're missing picks, they have an aging team, and some young players at the same time, extended on longer term contracts. Like how do you retool this if that is to happen?
it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think at the end of the day, they still do have quite key pieces locked up long
Yes.
term. So, you know, Marchand, yeah, look, I don't think Brad Marchand goes anywhere either, and I think he's one of those players that'll sign a team-friendly contract. He proved it with that contract, 6.1 mil. What an absolute
If he
steal.
doesn't retire,
Um,
yeah.
if he doesn't retire, but again, what is he? He's 35.
Yeah, 35, it'd be 37. Like
Yeah.
you're
So
looking at retirement.
He could, or he could play on. But I guess it just depends. But at the same time, you got Pasternak till 2031. You got Zaka till 27, Coyle till 2026, and that's probably your second and third line. You've got Morgan Geekie, who like let's see what he becomes, but he could become a second, third line center as well. So they've got some depth in that sense. We're probably, as we said in the thing, they're probably just missing that out and out first line center. Their defense, you've got Hampus Lindholm till 2030, Charlie McAvoy till 2030. I mean Brandon Carlo till 27. So you've got a pretty reasonable. That's half your defense locked up for a little while,
Mm.
and two of the best defenders locked up long term. Then you've got the likes of Swayman, who's a solid goaltender. They're probably going to sign. They'll sign him long term at the end of this year. Um, yeah, you might lose Allmark, but at the end of the day, you've still got a relatively good goaltender in Swayman there. So they've still got the pieces to be relevant. I just feel like the question on whether these guys are going to be any good in 2, 3, 4 years time is going to come down to what can management do come free agency, because they're not going to, like, unless they fucking develop some of these, I'm sorry for the words, but unless they develop some of these late picks that they've got because they've been trading out their top end picks, unless they can develop some of this talent into something which isn't off the cards, they're not really going to be able to dig into that prospect pool. Unless, yeah, miracles, and they pull out a couple of these second rounders late, you know,
Yeah,
fifth, sixth,
like
seventh rounders.
you're relying on lottery. Like the deeper you go with your
You are.
picks, you're relying
You
on
definitely
lottery.
are.
But
Exactly.
like
But there's
when
no
when
nothing
we're
to say that
saying
they won't
like
be free agents.
what they're missing, and all we keep saying is they're missing a first line center. Like that's not missing much. Generally
No.
every other team's like, oh, they're missing a top end goalie and something else, and they've got two top end goalies, and all they're really missing is just that. Um, a first line center, maybe another scoring winger just to replace the some of the goals from Krejci and Bertuzzi, and even all of going not all of, but going away. Like, it's just like I can just see they're gonna lack in a little bit more goals. I feel like the shakeup will pretty much shake up the system, like the amazing system they had going last season. I don't know, shake it up so much that they drop off the face of the earth, but I think they'll be in the hunt all season. It's just how far do they drop, and I just think like a team like Ottawa, maybe in a Buffalo, finally, they finally pinch like a Boston and a Tampa's spot, and finally go on their little run, and it's hard to put doubt. Everyone had doubts on this team last year, and then they did what they did. I didn't personally. I still had them in the playoffs last
Nah,
year.
I
Um,
thought that was ridiculous.
I thought it
Like
was a
they
little bit
still had
ridiculous, but
to have them not even making playoffs was just ludicrous. I think
yeah,
that was people just going too far. They still had Bergeron and Krejci when they weren't signed and there was question marks. Yeah, you could show
yeah,
some doubt, but like once those two were signed, you're like, well, that's a playoff berth
yep.
basically secured. Um, yeah,
But
so
no,
that
they
was ridiculous.
but they got good centers. Like Zaka's a great center. Coyle's a great center. Two great wingers, Marchand and Pasta. They've been playing with each other for a long time. I like DeBrusque. Obviously, he's only got the one more year. And he's a reasonable deal at 4 million at the moment. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of juggling with the salary cap. Hopefully, it goes up, so it makes it easier on bringing in some free agents. Hopefully, someone like a Swayman doesn't play maybe the what would you say the Matthews way and try and scrape out as much money as you possibly can, and you kind of do go from example of Marchand and whatnot, and just go, all right, I'll take a somewhat, instead of a 8 million deal, just saying if he was worth that, you take a 6 million, just take a little bit, but you're still getting paid, um,
Yeah. Well, they've
and,
got the history of team-friendly contracts,
yeah,
so you would hope. And look, Pastor's contract to an extent is a team-friendly contract. I think in the market when you see our Austin Matthews get 13.2, Pasta was being spoken about as 13.5 plus, and he takes 11.2. I feel like that's a big discount compared to what he could have
It's
gotten.
somewhat the reason why it's a discount is the term. He had term, Matthews didn't, and it will look better probably 2 seasons
Oh,
from now.
100%.
Like 2 seasons from now, it would be like, all right, that's really good. At the moment, it's still pricey. I would say to the end of this year, depending how much the cap goes up at the end of the year. But 60 goals is 60 goals. That
Oh, 100%.
how much do you pay for that? But you know, can he repeat that without the centers that we mentioned are gone? Um, yeah, I know we're going to do a video well, like a video after this of where our rankings are on the teams and where they'll finish in the standings and if they make playoffs or not. Um, like spoiler alert, at the moment, personally, I have Boston out, probably like a fifth. Like nothing crazy, but I just can't see how. I just more hyped up on a team like Ottawa and stuff who had a lot of good looks, just to piece it together completely, and now they've gotten stronger. So it's hard for this team to knock them out of playoffs because it is Boston, and almost feel like you're an idiot making that call. Let us know in the
I
comments below
Yeah,
if you think that's the same. But
yeah. Look,
yeah,
I'm the same as you. I've got them currently missing, and it's just purely because of my thoughts on Detroit and Ottawa, and Buffalo to an extent. And that's not to say I'm sitting here with Boston in my lineup with 80 points for the season. That's Boston up around the 90 points, and missing playoffs, because I just think the Atlantic is that strong that it's going to be that tight knit that you're going to see an absolute bloodbath to the playoffs.
mm. And
So
that's the thing.
it's not,
They'll feed points off each other. That's the other thing, which
yeah.
could hurt
So
them when the Metro, um, Metro is still really strong, but probably not as strong as the Atlantic, where they're feeding off points off each other like that. Um,
I think the
that's what
Metro
gives.
has the two strongest
Yeah.
teams in, oh, probably the three strongest teams in the East, but I just think the Atlantic is a lot deeper.
Mm.
I'm more afraid of
Depending on
the seven
Columbus.
teams.
I reckon Columbus will be not what they were last year,
Mm,
and I feel like that will shut up the deepness. Obviously, the only like
yeah,
the Atlantic doesn't really have a team here that is full rebuild. Everything's kind of retooling, whereas the Metro
real
have
step
obviously
worse, right?
Philly complete rebuild. But yes,
Islanders, Washington Capitals. Like, I don't think those three are going to be anything in this season. They might, two of them might shock me. Philly's not doing anything. Sorry, Philly fans, but they're like, if they're not eighth in the Metro, I'd be shocked. But I can't see New York Islanders or Washington doing anything this season. I don't see a bounce back. I
yeah.
only see the
So
five teams in the Metro.
so you could
Um,
see a two wild card spots from the Atlantic
the
this season.
Atlantic,
You
yeah,
could easily
yeah.
see that, and I feel like if we do see that, that's an easy way that Boston buy their ticket, and because I feel like they're around fifth at the moment, just for me. If they don't make any more moves, I'm not sure if they're done or not. I'm not sure if General Manager Sweeney has said that he is done. He's happy with this, but I personally wouldn't be. It's hard to juggle it. It's hard to trade a piece like Allmark that just had the season he has, but you got to do it now where the value's crazy. He's got term. He's kind of cheap. Like,
It's where are you trading him to? That's
oh,
probably the other difficult.
I know you're probably not getting the right things back, but you got like teams
Well,
like New Jersey and whatnot that need that goalie. Like, there's
yeah,
plenty. There's probably more than half the league that need an Allmark. The problem is, you know, are they the team that's
what
going to
you
give you exactly what you need?
what you need.
Because
Yeah,
they don't need
because,
picks at the moment.
well, what rebuild is going after Allmark and handing up a first round a first line center?
Mm,
Like, this is, yeah, like, this is the tough part about it is, yeah, it makes sense to go, all right, who's your best asset? Well, Allmark, he's worth a reasonable amount, and his 5 million cap hit helps us in that sense. But who are you trading him to? Yep, you could say New Jersey because they need a goaltender. Ottawa, Buffalo, they need goaltenders. But A, you're helping out fellow Eastern Conference teams. And B, they aren't going to send you a first line center in return because they need that first line center. So it's like, yeah.
Would it be crazy if they traded to Anaheim for like a Zegras? I know there's Zegras.
Well,
Zegras still hasn't signed. I know he's
I
got
can
a.
tell you right now, Allmark would not be happy at all. There'd be some choice words from Allmark, I think, if he got traded to Anaheim at this point.
I'm
But
just thinking like I know Zegras with his contract. I don't think he's the type of player you'd probably want to bring in. I think he's a little bit too much about me to I don't want to say overconfidence, more like jock like, all up himself kind of attitude, and that may not be what Boston wants. But I'm just thinking of
yeah.
players that are having issues or haven't re-signed yet. And that was just the first thing that came to mind was Zegras because he hasn't re-signed, and obviously Anaheim has the cap space to take on 5 million.
100%. But the issue you've got with Zegras is you've got to re-sign him.
Oh yeah. I don't know
And
what other things you offload. That was just the first thing that came to mind because obviously Anaheim have cap and obviously
yeah,
Zegras hasn't re-signed,
because
and it's getting pretty
Zegras
late.
at the
But
moment, yeah, well, Zegras at the moment apparently it's a $3 to $4 million contract, and it's a bridge deal.
yep.
So if he went to Boston, they've got $5 million if you get rid of Allmark. They got $5 million to offer him as a bridge deal. Is he
Mm-hmm.
going to take that? Like, it's an interesting question, but at the same time, you're not going to give Anaheim's not going to give a 22-year-old Zegras away for 2 years of Allmark. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Well, honestly, with that team, anything could happen. There's not much
oh,
for Anaheim. There's
it
not much
could,
signed long term, but
but yeah,
I don't know where else you could look. Like there's like
that's why I think they're done. That's why I
what
think
other
they'll be done.
center can you get like that is a cash strip team? Like Tampa's at the at the limit. Toronto's at the limit. Maybe they get a Matthews. Wouldn't that be funny? Just Matthews and pasta. No,
Also, eat half his contract.
We just re-signed you, but we're gonna eat your
Hey, look.
contract.
Hey, look. Toronto do enjoy getting absolutely reamed by Boston, right? So,
Oh,
maybe.
I just don't know where they go next. For that center, it can't be anyone like crazy
I
good.
think they're just hoping. I think
I
they're
think you
just
gotta
hoping
hope.
that Coyle, Zaka, and Geeky can control that center. That's what I'm feeling.
The only other crazy thing I could think of would be like an Elias Pettersson from Vancouver. That would
Yeah,
be
but
the only crazy. Like they got Thatcher Demko there as a goalie, who's on 5 mil. They would obviously have to deal with that as well. But I'm just looking at forwards that may not stay at their club. Um, contract issues maybe in the future for Pedersen if Vancouver don't make it. I don't know who else you could think of. But yeah,
yeah,
just interesting names, interesting trades you could think about
yeah,
to make this team better now. Obviously, Pedersen's got 7 something million, so you'd have to
I'd have to eat some of that.
eat at least 2 mil. But
Mm.
yeah, I think they get worse. To sum up, probably around fifth in the Atlantic, maybe making playoffs, maybe missing by like a few points. If they do miss the playoffs, and if they make the playoffs, honestly, this team's built in a way that they could do a run. Like if they scrape in the playoffs, they could easily
Yeah.
do a Florida.
I was gonna
So
say,
they
imagine
just
if
need
they
to
did
buy their
that.
ticket. They just need to buy their ticket, and that's it. Personally, and if
Mm.
they do, then they have a chance of winning the cup.
It'd be pretty funny if Boston go from the season they had,
Yep.
first round exit, to
Yep.
having a absolutely average season, making the playoffs,
Seed
going on a
17.
run, winning a cup. Seriously, I'm not even kidding. Because you look at Florida, right? Florida won the President's Cup
Yep.
the year before, and yep, it was a second round exit, I think, that year, but it was very disappointing from what they were producing. And then they go and have the absolute dog. It was dog shit. It was a crap season. They didn't deserve to be in the playoffs, yet they make the Stanley Cup final. And it's like, how?
Hmm.
How does that happen? And look,
I could easily see
Florida's
that.
teams, Florida's teams probably built a little bit better. Like they underperformed quite drastically. As we've mentioned several times before, and you brought up the coaching structure was the big question mark for Florida. But yeah, you look at it and go, well, Boston have a pretty good coaching structure. They have decent pieces there. So you could see them having an average season scraping into the playoffs, but then, the likes of Pasternak, Marchand, McAvoy, Lindholm sort of carrying them through, Allmark and Swayman again carrying them through the playoffs to make a Stanley Cup appearance. Crazier things have happened. So,
Mm.
yeah, look, I don't personally think that'll happen. I'm with you. I feel like they're going to be in a dogfight to make the playoffs, and I could see them missing out, especially with Detroit and Ottawa. But we could be wrong. Detroit and Ottawa could be actually another year off, and they could have an absolute crap year,
Mm.
and Boston could
Oh yeah,
cruise into another
Detroit, Ottawa,
playoff appearance.
Buffalo, and you got a declining Boston, Tampa, with basically the same old Toronto, um, regular season only Toronto. Yeah, like that. It's just hard to gauge it. Unfortunately, there's going to be two teams in that division that suffer. At least two teams that suffer. When they probably shouldn't. But that is just the way it is with the system that is put in place. I've got nothing else to say there. I think it's a strong team. It's missing a piece or two, mainly in the forward department. I think their defense is sound. Goalies is obviously sound. Um, a lot of their top pieces are sound. It is just missing a first line center and maybe a second line winger or something like that. Um, other than that, yeah, really good team. Not much dead cap. We didn't touch on, but their dead cap does go up next year by $1 million, so that takes up a little bit of the increase. But other than that, strong team. Hopefully they make the playoffs because it's a great organization. But yeah, unless you got anything else to add, we'll end it there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was a little bit disappointed that they crashed out
Oh,
badly as they did
everyone was
last year.
disappointed. I
It
think
was it
even
was an absolute enjoyment to
right,
watch. I know a
yeah.
lot of people dislike the Boston Bruins, but yeah,
Oh, even if
obviously
you,
you've got
I'm sorry, if even if you're a hater, like if you hate a
you
team,
had to
you,
you
you
had to
you had
enjoy
to
that.
want them to at least go to the second round, like for the
Yeah,
season they had, because it was such good
yeah,
hockey. Like it's good
it
hockey.
was. It
Um,
was.
like
And
that's just the thing.
like yeah, it's you had to love and for Bergeron to go out like one of the best players in the game, and I don't just mean like player on ice. Like he's
Just
just
human.
a
Just a
stand up human being. With some of the stuff that he's done throughout his career and in his lifetime. So, yeah, it would have been great to see him get that sort of send off. It was disappointing that they didn't,
yeah.
obviously, but yeah, outside of that, I got
I
no qualms.
I would love if the Boston make the playoffs that they like somehow get him signed for
Signed,
just
comes out
just
of retirement.
just to play the
Yeah.
playoffs. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
I'd love to see that.
He's been training all season,
Yeah,
waiting for the call up. Yeah,
comes
yeah.
out
It'd be
200
incredible.
kilos heavier. Just a full unit. Just
Sign a dollar contract and
yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever the contract
League
they have
min.
to. Yeah, league min, and then yeah. Look, that would be incredible. I wouldn't be against seeing that.
No.
Um, but yeah, no. Look, hopefully they can pull something together so that the crash isn't as bad as what it could be. But yeah, it's hard to see them getting anywhere near what they did last season. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it's hard to see any team doing what they did last season.
Well, they had good systems, so sometimes you just need the right players to fill that system. But yeah, leave a like on the video, guys. Subscribe to the channel for more content. We'll be covering preseason, regular season, doing power rankings and so forth. We'll be doing our rankings of where we think predictions of where we think the teams will finish coming soon. So look out for that. And yeah, leave a comment below what you think of the Boston Bruins, how they're going to perform this year, how big is the fall, if there is a fall. And yeah, just let us know. But until next time, we'll catch you guys.